Okay, Google says it's 4 o'clock. Let's call our meeting to order. Harry, can you call the roll, please?
I can. Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Ebero,
Here.
Mr. Kapla,
Here.
Mr. Schneider,
Here.
and Mr. Borgman is here. Our GM and staff is here, and I don't see any aldermen
Yeah.
this evening.
Both of them alerted me that they were unable to attend this evening.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Harry.
all present.
Nick, was the meeting appropriately noticed?
Yes, the meeting was appropriately noticed. We sent out postings to City Hall and the library, in addition to various media outlets.
Thank you. Public comment period. At this time, the commission would recognize members of the public who've indicated a desire to address the commission. Upon recognition, persons may speak up to 3 minutes to address the commission, first stating their name and address. Commission may take action on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Do we have any public comments today? Seeing none. Commissioner, council, and staff comments. Commissioners, anything? And no council members today. Do we have any staff comments?
Just a quick update. We didn't include lead and PFAS in the agenda, so just a quick update there. You're probably seeing the lead update in the newsletter, but I think John reported just over 250 lead services completed during this construction season. And John and his team is working with the SEH on the PFAS remediation, so that's ongoing, but nothing noteworthy to report at this time.
Thank you. Employee service recognition.
Yes, so today, I should say on August 26th, Jim Benson celebrated 20 years service with MU. Jim has held numerous roles during his time, and he's currently handling our building and grounds along with receiving and conservation. And then Sean Marsh celebrated 10 years of service on August 28th. And Sean, he was just here. He's our system and network administrator.
Good. The strategic plan update that you provided.
Yes, so this is the quarterly update that we provide each quarter. And I think the update just shows that we are making progress on a number of the items and keep moving forward.
Any questions? Go ahead.
On page 3, or the second page of that document, I guess, for the goal on the texting, to be objective, it looks like first one for initiatives.
Yeah.
Do you know, so are we planning to mass enroll everybody without permission, or?
Correct. We've done some research on this, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of varying thoughts on how you do that, but we've reached out to actually lawyers in DC that gave us direction that we're able to basically, when someone signs up for service with the utility, they're providing consent for us to provide notifications as long as they're not, and we're going to use that diligently. It's not as though it's not from an advertising, it's more for informational purposes, like on bills being due, and then rolling into outages and water quality issues, just the information that is needed for our customer base.
Okay, thanks.
Still be an opt-out or not?
Yes, there'll be an opt-out or a stop feature. Joe's actually leading the charge on that. I don't know, anything else to add, Joe?
It's pretty simple. Just like anything else, you can type stop and then just obviously after we test it. So
Good. Good question. Other questions? Looks like things are moving along. Okay, moving on. The Audit Services RFP.
Yes, so this past Friday, the proposals were due for auditing services. We'll begin the process of reviewing and ranking the proposals this week. In the past, from the utilities side, the staff, basically myself and others, would work through the process of doing the review and then providing a recommendation back to the body. And we've done that here recently with the banking services and other similar situations. We did note that the city's review team includes some elected officials, and while it's not required, I wanted to bring it back to you just to see if there was any interest in the commission in taking part in the evaluation and recommendation process. I should note that we received one official proposal and one proposal that we're still trying to determine if it's qualified or not. So unfortunately pretty limited responses, but that's just the nature of the beast sometimes, especially when what's out there. So that's what it's at, and I guess if there's anyone interested, I included the schedule in your packet. There's could be a number of meetings between now and getting to the recommendation, potentially if we're doing interviews and a number of other steps. I think staff is more than qualified, but if you feel as though someone from the commission wanted to or should, we're more than welcome to have you join us.
So I think you left it as a open-ended. I happened to be at the city council meeting where they were deciding which city staff and council members were going to be on this audit committee. And the thing that struck me, I mean, I think there's two issues. One is the policy versus down in the weeds piece, and I think we've done a good job as a commission staying at the policy level and not getting down in the weeds. But at the same time, if there's a working opportunity to work with some of the other council members in a less than formal setting, I think that's something that needs to be evaluated also. Because if there are opportunities like this to get some of that relationship building between the commission and the council, that has value. That said, I don't see a reason for me to participate in this bid. But just why we've got it on there.
I considered it, but first 4 weeks, I'm going to be gone, so I missed the first 4 meetings. It makes no sense.
I'm traveling a lot too the next few weeks. Other thoughts? Okay. No action there. Number 8, review of draft lead and galvanized water service replacement ordinance.
Well, yes. So as we work to remove lead water services throughout the community, one challenging area is getting the replacement of the private water side, or water services. These are the locations where the water service has remained that's owned by the property owner. Currently, there are 134 private side lead water services in our community. These owners over the past couple of years have received numerous notices from us indicating that they have a lead water service, and unfortunately, a number of them have passed on moving forward with the replacement. Sadly, some property owners just don't care. Others have indicated whoever buys the home in the future can worry about the issue, or others want to get it replaced, however, just haven't made it a priority. So I was trying to find my spot in my notes here. The draft ordinance would establish a time frame at which replacement is required or penalties can be imposed. The cost of replacement by residential properties is currently being covered by DNR grants, and while our hope is that that program will continue into the future, there are no guarantees. We've worked with Forward Bank to develop a program to help those that are not able to carry the cost of paying a contractor while waiting for reimbursement from the DNR. Other communities like Green Bay, Kaukauna, Menasha, Mosinee, Sun Prairie, and others have passed similar ordinances. And while the ordinance isn't something that the Common Council has the ultimate authority to adopt, we bring it tonight for the Commission to provide feedback and for consideration on passing a motion just in support of it. I think as included in the write-up, I think the two main items that you may want to consider or look at is one, in the ordinance we talk about replacing the remainder of the public side in a 10-year window. I believe that fits in line with what we've talked about previously, but just wanted to confirm that. And then the second piece is just the replacement schedule on the private side. Basically looked at a 3-year window. I think you can make a justification for a lot of different areas or a lot of different directions there. We chose the 3-year thinking that hopefully the DNR grants would still be around through that process. Plus it give, especially the 17 or so private side, a few years to make preparations and prepare for, the enduring costs that would be associated with the replacement. And also knowing that the contractors out there, in order to do the replacement, there is some limits there, and trying to overload them all in a 1-year window would be pretty tough for them to complete. So those were some of the thoughts on the 3-year. But I'm open to any comments or suggestions that you have.
Go ahead.
I know in there it talks about the, the fine that's a potential. How does that, can you explain a little bit as to how that's intended to work? I mean, would that only occur at the end of the 3-year window? And then once the 3-year window has expired, you'd be subject to a fine, or what's the intention?
I think there's, and John, correct me if I add on, I think there's two parts to that. So a majority of the 134 services that are let out there, we don't have a public side. Our side's already taken care of. So those that are definitely in that bucket, they would have the 3-year window. Then we would, then we have to provide them a notice, basically a 30-day notice at the end of that saying, hey, you do not comply. And then if they don't comply after those 30 days, we can work through the police department, I believe the director of public works, and possibly the inspection department can then begin a process of going forward with any potential finding. In those situations where we have the private side, or sorry, the public side has to be replaced as well, there we would try to work with the property owner, but the same rules would apply. That is, once we make our update, they would have 30 days to move forward with getting theirs done as well. In those situations, we're hopeful to let them drive that situation. We'd rather not push them unless we get to a point where the 3-year window is getting up, or we have to because of road replacement or whatever might make sense in those situations.
There's two situations in that where we need to drive the bus. One is if there's a whole street project going forward, I don't want to have to be able to stop the street project because I got to get this one person to do their surface. So we need an arm to say, hey, we're doing this, and so you need to do it in a certain window to get it to be done. The other part of that is there have been a handful of times so far where it's copper in the basement by the meter, but when we've replaced our side, we have found it to be lead at the curb stop. So somewhere in there, they must have had a leak at one point and replaced part of it, but not all of it. And so those you only find out after you've already dug. So we need an arm to make that property owner replace theirs. Otherwise, for the most part, we can let the property owner drive the bus then, and whenever they replace theirs, we'll come and get it.
Did you have a question?
Possibly a couple.
Go ahead.
You probably mentioned this before, Nick, but just refresh my memory. How does one building's customer side potentially affect or endanger another's water supply?
You mean the service to one property impacting the service to another property?
Yeah, because we're essentially going to force people or try to force people to replace their own personal entrance on their customer side with the clause of, or with a statement that it's posing a threat to public health. So is it just their public health or like their neighbors too?
No, just to the property itself. The property that's served by a lead service has the ability, lead has been determined through the EPA to provide, cause health concerns, health issues, and drinking of the water through that lead service could then, could lead to some of those health issues. So it's, just the property where that lead service is located, given that water only flows in one direction from the main to the house. It's just that service and that home that's affected by that lead service.
Gotcha. And then, just curious, then why do we care if they replace it or not, if it's just their own personal health? And if they're made aware of it, that they're affecting their own potential health, that why do we want to step in?
We're required to replace all the lead services on our system, regardless if they're owned by the utility or by the private property owner.
Oh, I gotcha.
The requirement that started a few years ago, that's
From the
regardless.
From the state of Wisconsin.
Yes.
DNR.
Yeah, it's from the DNR as part of the EPA rules, right?
I wonder why the DNR is forcing a utility to go onto someone's personal property to replace without their permission, essentially, or force them to do it. Because then why not do it inside their home too? Because some people have lead pipes indoors. Why is it stopped there?
Now, that's the next arm, I think, that's coming down the road, because they're asking us as part of this new lead copper rule, they're asking us to start getting documentation on exactly that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, there's that side. There's also the lead paint that's in homes. I've seen programs that are out there as well that people can take advantage of if they have lead paint in their homes to get remediation done.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt. I have lead paint in my house.
Yeah.
Lots of people do, but it's a major pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then why is it the galvanized should be replaced as well?
I'll let John answer that one.
That has been deemed from the DNR that everything that's been installed that has been galvanized at one time was considered to be downstream of a lead service, which in our case is probably a pretty accurate statement, because every galvanized one we found on the property side at one time probably was a lead service more often than not. So they've always, and that happens, it tends to, as lead pieces break off, that galvanized iron will grab it and hold on to it for a while, and then it can tend to slough off at some point, releasing a mass amount of lead at one given moment.
Gotcha. Because we would potentially replace galvan with galvanized, right?
We have replaced galvanized services. Nobody's put any new galvanized in. It's all been either copper and or PEX plumbing.
Okay, I gotcha. I thought I read somewhere that we could replace galvanized with galvanized. Okay.
No.
Another question too, but if you don't mind, is on page 3. For the survey and self-inspections, is that inspection digging up their yard or inspecting
No.
inside?
No, we ask that if you apply for a grant, that we're allowed to come see for sure that it is a lead service, just to make sure we're not replacing somebody's copper service, that it is an actual galvanized or lead service, that we're not spending money just frivolously, just for proof.
Okay. Oh, here it is. So this second to last page, no, third to last page, it just said that all of the following service line material combinations are subject to partial or full replacement with galvanized copper or plastic service lines. You see that?
Yeah, I think, you bring up a good point that we should strike that from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So to follow up your question, if you've got lead pipes in your house and there's some future action on that, would downstream galvanized within people's houses fall under
It
that?
would fall under the same, as long as the DNR sticks to what they say that they've been doing with the services, it would fall in the same category, yes. I don't know how far they're going to push that in the future, but they are asking us to start documenting that information when we start doing our cross-connection inspections.
Wow.
Wow.
Obviously, the goal is to get all of this replaced and not have to fine anybody. If fines did occur, can you clarify that that money would go to the city? Or, I would prefer to hear you say it's going to go to the city and not to the utility, but where will it go?
I think ultimately it's a city ordinance, and the
So it
city would
goes
be
to the
the
city.
fining would be
So
due.
we are not doing it for monetary reasons.
No, definitely not, no. No. Like you said, our goal is to get these all taken care of
Right.
before anyone receive any fines or even have to get to that point.
And there's no grants available for businesses, correct?
Not currently.
Do you know what the potential cost is for a business?
I would say at least 5,000 to 6,000 or maybe more. The challenge with many of the businesses are usually, instead of just having the sidewalk, you have there's a lot more concrete restoration that might be involved,
Yeah.
and that's where the cost is more. Plus the size could be slightly larger, but usually the service length could be shorter, potentially shorter as well, so a number of factors.
Yeah.
I would imagine if it's like on Central Avenue with all that concrete, it's going to be a lot more.
That's what I'm wondering. And some of them, I don't blame some of the ones that didn't replace it, just because I know in there, they don't even use the water just for toilets essentially.
Sure.
So they have forcing someone to spend $5,000-10,000 potentially. That's a hard one.
And the sad part on that is, yes, we are doing that, but it is because we have to. Within our 15-year window, they all have to be gone. So sooner or later, they have to go one way or the other.
I'm hoping to work with various groups that help the downtown and other areas to maybe develop some type of program that might help subsidize some of that cost. But
Yeah.
that's yet to be determined.
That's my biggest hesitation on it, is like, there's probably gonna be people that haven't done it on here because it's a hardship and, there's grant money available. What do we do when someone says I can't afford it?
Right. Yeah.
And then we'll fine them.
From the residential standpoint, at least at the current moment, we have the grant to do that, plus the forward bank to subsidize it until they get the reimbursement. So from a residential standpoint, all it really is going to cost you is the time to take and fill out the permit application, coordinate with the plumber, and then fill out the reimbursement application. There would be absolutely no cost to a residential owner. The commercial, on the other hand, the DNR has taken a hard stance. They in their mind, it is just the cost of doing business. Now, maybe down the road they will change that, but we've been into this program since 2016 and they haven't budged yet. So at this point, I'm going to say they probably won't. So those are the people that, yes, we are going to be asking them to come up with that money on their own.
Yeah. And so there is enough funds for all 107 residentials then?
Well, it's a
Currently.
year-to-year program, so, and that's one of the reasons why we are pushing this, is because on that application for next year's program, it is a point getter for scoring points to see how you qualify to whether you get money or not. So if we're going to keep up with everybody else, we're gonna want to have an ordinance in place to score those points. So we can do everything we can to ensure that we can get another grant, yes. Currently, the grant that we have runs out at the end of the year. So whatever, we have money available, we probably don't have enough to do. If all 120 some or whatever it is decide to go right now, we probably don't have enough to cover it. But generally speaking, that hasn't happened, over the course of these times. So I would say that we should, do our best to help us score as well as we can for the next application.
And the DNR's deadline is,
October 31st, I'll have to make the next application.
I mean, when they are requiring all replaced.
We exceeded the action limit in 2020, so we have till 2035 to get everything out. Now, there's a caveat to that. We have to get 168 every year. The only time you cannot get 168 is in your very last year. So we are ahead of the program so far. We did 230 last year, we're at 250 some now. So we really don't have till 2035 anymore. We're kind of ahead of the game, so to speak.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. The state should really have a law, not us.
I think this is what they call an unfunded mandate.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because there's going to be people that just can't afford it.
I get it.
That, on the commercial side of it too,
Yeah, and I think, as, I guess the idea that I have in my head is that maybe in March, when we start thinking about economic development funding, maybe in there we ask for a carve-out or some sort to help support those businesses.
Yeah.
That way we're recognizing the issue, recognizing the hardship we're placing, but also trying to provide some relief.
It'd be nice if we could just somehow designate that, yeah.
Would anybody like to recommend a vote of support when this goes to the council?
Sure. I move that we,
That the commission endorses this
yeah.
I'll second
piece by Paul and by John. Any further discussion? I think Nick's been foreshadowing this in front of the council a number of times already, so this should not come as a surprise.
So we're just a front load in the wording that it's basically a state thing. I don't know if that would help at all.
Certainly in the presentation of it. Other suggestions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The building update.
Yes, so progress on the building continues. Right now, we've seen a lot of installation of precast panels along with steel. Roofing should be starting here shortly as well, as far as the sloping and insulation and membrane. Generator relocation is something that started work on today, and they're hoping to get that completed this week as well, getting it moved to its final location, and then that'll free up space so that they can start working on the earthwork in the front of the building and then around the back as well. So things are moving forward. Just gotta hope for more or less no more rainy days.
Thanks, Nick. Any questions? Number 10, governance review.
Yeah, so tonight for your consideration is revisions to policy 1080 to include language that covers any future formation of a committee or a subcommittee. You may remember a few months ago when we were discussing KPI, one of the ideas came up about subcommittees, and we didn't have anything in the policies to really identify what that meant as far as framework. So I reached out to Steve Sock with Boardman and Clark, and he proposed the language that I included in the write-up for you help ensure that if we did form a subcommittee in the future, that we understand the open, the requirements of meeting the open records law and other things.
Motion to approve as
Second.
presented, second by Paul. Anybody have suggestions to improve that language?
It's worded well.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Job orders.
Yes, so we have one job order this evening. It's Phase 2 of the Rockland Underground Primary Loop, 800 block of 17th, 18th, and 19th Street. This is a continuing replacement of inaccessible and aging overhead with new underground primary. This project, Phase 1 was started last year, and this is the continuation. The estimated project cost is $87,116. The budget actually was $114,000, so a little bit higher. And Tony and his team, as they reviewed it, they were actually reduced the scope slightly to help ensure that the project stayed underneath budget, because obviously we've been dealing with increased material prices.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the job order?
So moved. Oh, go ahead, Harry.
Harry first, Paul second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Bills and payroll.
Bills have been reviewed and certified properly. One thing I want to point out is on page 1 of the prepayments, lines 3 and 4 are larger checks made out to Marshfield Utilities. That was to transfer funds from CSB over to Forward Bank.
Thank you for clarifying that. Is there a motion to approve the bills and payroll?
So moved.
By Harry, second by John. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Previous meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of August 8th?
So moved.
By Paul, second by Nate. Corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Financial reports, we're back to you.
Included in the financial reports, balance sheet and income statements and other financial reports for July, as well as the August cash reports.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, approval to go into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating purchasing public properties, the investing of public funds, conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session for the purpose of discussing power supply and negotiation over easement rights, and approval to go into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility for the purpose of discussing commission self-evaluation. Is there a motion to approve both? And I think this is a voice vote.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second by Paul and by Nate. Harry, can you call the roll?
Sure.
Vote.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Eberl?
Yes.
Mr. Kepler?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
And Mr. Boardman is yes.
All right. We are in closed session. We'll adjourn for 5 minutes while we empty the room. Thank you.